Todavía no.
Hello everyone, this is Heritage Mezcal. I am Chava Peribán and I am here with Jose. Jose, welcome again.
It's such a pleasure to be here again.
What was your last name? I'm terrible with last names.
López Ganem.
Okay, well, second one, it's
It's
distinguishable.
It has more of a adieu, yes.
Yeah,
the other one is more
a
like...
cachet.
Yeah. The other one is more, what is it? Geographical identification.
Okay,
Yes.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so your nomenclature is right there. Going in specificity.
Yes, definitely. From what is it? The vineyard to the clos in Burgundy, yes.
I love that. And that's very, very apt to the discussion we're going to have. Well, like in agave, we're always... I mean, I just heard this from Gary Nabaum, which is a man that wrote a book that it's the past, the present, the future of agave. And he was saying that in a bottle of mezcal, you have more biodiversity than in the whole range of Scotch, whiskey, and vodka together. Just if you consider the amount of agave species that are out there, the amount of yeasts that are used to ferment it, bacteria and other microorganisms that are involved in the fermentation, you're talking a galaxy that will be really, that we don't even know how big it's right now. Mm-hmm. We have like one of those microscopes that, we're seeing some nebulous elements, but we don't know with its specifics how big it is. Something that I think was the first step of my approaches to cacao and patashtle,
Yes,
which
yes.
we'll get with what patashtle is. No, because when I tried patashtle, I was mind blown. It's the richness, also the genetic richness that there is. Yet I had never talked with that's sort of invisible in the marketplace, or I'm just silly and I just had never asked.
Yeah, genetics are big in cacao.
Okay.
Very big. Yeah.
So can you give us like a quick... so if I understand correctly, you have Teobroma.
Uh-huh.
And you have Teobroma bicolor.
Yes. Teobroma cacao. Uh-huh. Teobroma bicolor.
Which is the patashtle, which is most like an white almond that tastes like the gods love us.
Uh-huh. What a sensory note.
Well, no, I really, the first time I tried patashtle, it was like... And it was weird because it was like uncanny, where I was trying something that felt somehow familiar, but it felt very far away. And just because it's more like almondy, like the grease level of it, it's gorgeous.
It's
just
different.
Super different. And then you have cacao, which is something we're more familiar with.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like a really like eye-opening moment of, okay, this in terms of genetic diversity is bigger than what I had thought.
Look, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that will specifically be able to talk about genetics in many different ways, and that there will be many postures as to it. To the question in terms of in the marketplace and in the parlance of the industry, when we talk about genetics, yes, this is huge in cacao, right? Specifically when we talk within the Teobroma cacao gender, or with the species of it. We talk about very different approaches, about hybridization, about disease resistancy, about sensory profiles in terms of lack or abundance of, for example, acidity, astringency, or bitterness. So there is a ton of reasons why we speak genetics in cacao.
And for what you're telling me, it's both for the grower that may be choosing what do they want to plant, and which is more of a reasonable bet against the global warming, pests, and all of that, and from a quality perspective of what will be considered in contemporary palates a more complex, more appreciated version of Teobroma cacao.
Absolutely. And it has to do also with cultural reasons to plant something. Oh. It also has to do with reasons of disease, as you have called it, a bet, in which we are in a world that we have all sorts of challenges. Climate change is one, disease is the big other one in cacao. So definitely there's a reason of why to choose one over the other, but as the grower as well as the consumer, there's increasing relevance in this topic.
And you mentioned something really like cultural predisposition to what does that mean? Like, there's people that like better the shape of some cacaos and all. Like culturally, what's the reason behind that? And before you answer, though,
Yes,
I want to give you mezcal. Yeah, we're speaking without filling our tanks. I apologize for that.
Yeah, I am empty. As we say in Mexico, that we only have 2 types of gas, full of premium.
Full of premium.
Because the other one is magna, and it's like the geographical identification versus the denomination of origin.
Love
for
that.
Cars.
I just called them from limon y fresa. That's cool.
The color. I love it. I love it. Nothing makes you feel more powerful here in Mexico than arriving to a gas station and saying, please fill it up with premium.
Lleno de premium.
Lleno de premium. You really feel your status when you go like, it's like 200 pesos of magna because you really just need to get there, right?
It doesn't. That's lovely. I mean, this is very
Salud.
Cheers, sir. Oh man. So this is a very expressive notes that I just gave you.
So, contrary to the belief of mezcal, and this is also me learning about your domain, smoke, not a globalized sensory node on the mezcal process.
I mean, it's a little bit of the conversation we're having right now. Like, I think that markets, there's a history to markets. There's things that are perceived as appealing in terms of how they taste in certain areas of history. And then that changes, you know, like I think one of those things was smoke in the mezcal context in the early 2000s, because the way it made it to America, it was like in a lot of cocktails and stuff. And it was a very harsh differentiator.
Yes.
I don't know if in cacao you have something that you've seen evolved, where there was like maybe one style of chocolate that was beloved, and now it is pew pew because that's like, you know.
I mean, certainly, right? Like we went from chocolate de mesa, where we normally go with the gritty chocolate, all the way to the Swiss chocolate, and then we're kind of coming back. So yeah, there's a lot of styles, but if we speak, for example, in terms of varieties of the Teobroma cacao family, it was believed that there was Trinitario, Forastero, and Criollo. Criollo being the one that really hold the keys to the kingdom in terms of quality. Forastero and Trinitario, for better or worse, you know, took second and third place depending on who you asked. But now we have 11 types, and possibly we're gonna be discovering any subtypes or any sub varieties of this, and possibly we're not done. And there's a lot of discussion as to what makes good or what is the variety we should be focusing on or saving.
Well, and it's also crazy to me because chocolate is a global phenomenon. It's not like this tiny little thing that we're sipping right now, right? Like even what we're sipping right now, it's a Salmiana Crasispina called Verde, where these guys make it. And we're talking about something that it's almost like a genetic island. Like this thing has been... Nobody cared about this in the world until recently, and nobody's gonna go around planting this species around. Like I'll be shocked. But with cacao, that thing has traveled. So I can only imagine the mutations, the hybridizations, the way, yeah, right? Like,
I'm pretty sure we can write a novel about it because, you know, reading it in a dry textbook, I mean, there's people that want to read this and I admire all of them. But for me, I really need the Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
No. You want the soap opera.
Oh, yes, Netflix, get on it. Yeah, Televisa,
no,
please.
Televisa. No, Netflix, no.
2PP.
TV Azteca. I will even go to TV Azteca, not even Televisa. That's too mainstream for me.
Destilando amor, no. Fermentando amor en el cacao tal. Yes, please.
So, yeah. I mean, because, and it's also a crop that has carried drama. Like, drama and cacao are very much intertwined. So, I mean, and I'm getting so off topic, but...
I am just sighing. I'm like, oh, yes.
Oh, no.
I get my paycheck out of it.
Well, as you should. I always wanted to work in something that was full of drama. And mezcal is like 80% drinking, 10% drama.
Yes.
5% working, 5% sleeping. But...
All right. I guess, yeah. May I inherit you the cacao industry? I'll the chocolate. You choose.
I will. But... So you were saying, like, it's not even... clear what to focus on. So it seems like there is a strategic wheel behind of what should we planting and where, I'm guessing.
Yes.
I'm guessing what you choose to plant in Ecuador is not the same strategy as Madagascar. And what kind of discussions are those?
Wow. For the sake of the familiarity of the steak, let's focus on Mexico and Mesoamerica.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I was getting
because
too ambitious.
I'm pretty sure that is going to take us everywhere else because of the genetic center of variety. You have the most Byzantine discussion here is where on earth did the good cacao as a genetic material came about?
So the Platonic ideal of cacao.
Well, the Platonic idea, and this is, I'm sorry, coming back to my brand of like, how do we normalize the narrative into a business idea that gives everybody everything? But there is evidence that suggests that the genetic identity of cacao developed in the Amazon region. There is some evidence that points that some other might have developed on accord in Mesoamerica, in the area that now occupies the modern nations of Central America and Mexico.
So not Mexico.
So yeah, see when it starts getting like a little bit iffy, because you have a wealth of knowledge being produced with support or a lack of support or a wealth of support of some organizations that might have some sort of, as we say in Mexico, a candle in the velorio, a candle in the viewing or the I'm
a clear interest.
Yeah, a clear interest. Yeah, I'm sorry for my abuela idiom here, but I really wanted to use it.
No, but it's crazy
here.
when we try to say those things in
Funeral,
Spanish.
the funeral.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think when we use these formulas in Spanish, like una vela en el velorio,
yes,
your mind immediately goes to deep Spanish.
Yes.
So to go back to English,
yes,
it's a challenge.
I was deep Spanish right now. I apologize to everybody listening.
No, you're fine.
But so you have that. First, kind of, we'll try to put it on a historical timeline. So where on earth does cacao come from? And is the Mexico the real deal, the original one, or is it the Amazonian? Or was it by monkeys that they grab pots of cacao and they somehow travel all the way up Central America and deposited it in what we know as today the modern states of Chiapas and Tabasco? Yucatan also has come about as a possible way where the cenotes, have very specific types of very old genetics in cacao.
Really?
So there is all sort of or boats in the sea in terms of this. Of course, if we wanted to get where the overwhelming academic opinion is, we are for the idea that cacao, because of the number of varieties, Theobroma cacao was a plant that originated in the Amazon basin. As a Mexican, it's very difficult to say, not necessarily because I hold any pride on, but am I supposed to be on the team that says it originates from here,
No, Yucatan. Go to the cenote team.
The cenote team.
Yeah. Go,
isn't it that nice, right? Like
it's an amazing story.
It is.
Like, I will just go for the more colorful story. I'm not a very accurate person.
Let me say this is like, I don't see myself swimming down the Amazon River, but I could totally see myself swimming in a cenote, right?
You see, your research is gonna be way nicer.
For academic experience,
yeah, it's like
Yucatan Mágico.
Yeah,
yes, I see what you're doing there. So, in that case, for my despise of the heat, I'm gonna be like, the cacao origin is in Norway.
No, but I mean, even the cenote, for your lack of interest in heat.
Yeah,
you go underneath. It's chill. It's awesome.
I like this compromise.
Yeah.
Yes, I like this compromise. Anyway, I love truth, so let me continue with the unfortunate non-touristic idea of cacao having there. So that's one discussion that continues to be vibrant today. And of course, you can come down from your ivory pedestal, as we call the world of academia in the US, and then you find yourself in the industry. And of course, there's even more heated, more emotional opinions about this, and so on until the consumer. I think I have had to battle with my parents when I present this approaches. I don't consider it, I don't present it as a fact, where my parents feel completely betrayed of their Mexicanity when they learn that
we send you to study.
We send you, we pay.
We paid.
And then you come back and embarrass your family, almost like a Mulan kind of thing. It's like you have bring great dishonor to your family. So here I am. Then you have as to like, what is from all these varieties the best, right?
Which, yes. So Okay, so I would like, even before you tell me, you get me closer to the truth.
Yes, maybe some more mezcal.
Yeah. Well, I just loved it. I just talked to these guys. There's a chance I buy 100
so
liters
good.
from them, and I am very excited about it. But if you were to bet in Comascalco, what to plant, you.
Me.
Without having to be.
I'm not a gambler, so but you're forcing me to bet.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I'm giving you a little bit of money, not a lot of money, but I'm giving you the chances to bet. And in Comascalco specifically, which is one of the, if I understand correctly, one of the bigger producers of cacao in this country, which genetics will you plant and why?
Wow.
Putting you on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot because definitely all my friends, all the agrologists, all the people that are friends of both of us are going to be like, Jose can't answer that question. I'll just be the medium of putting out there what it has been said to me. Okay, it's like this is where you go.
Medium as in like esoteric medium, or medium as a channel?
Channel. But given that we're in the Chontalpa, I have to use the other one as well, maybe. I'll let you know after the reactions to this podcast. Okay. So in the Chontalpa, you have a diversity that it's known as much as it is celebrated. For example, we have areas of the Chontalpa that have been planted with what we call a white bean genetic. If you were to slice, just for reference of those who listen or are looking at us, is you have beans that are either purple or light or dark purple inside, and you have ones that might be more an ivory white color. Those are a particular genetic that we mostly associate with the category of criollo cacao.
So the most expensive, the most perceived to be the highest quality.
Correct. The ones that are more celebrated, and they can be celebrated for many reasons, but specifically is because their flavor profile tends to convey less harsher, more balanced notes, specifically when it comes to, for example, bitterness.
Okay.
So we like that, and it's something that we feel more prone to, that needs perhaps less sugar in order to have vibrancy. It has also flavor notes that we can associate both in smell and taste. Maybe if it's a little acid, or maybe if it's a little sweet, that with flowers or with all kinds of things that goes beyond tasting like a brownie.
I mean, this sounds amazingly sexy.
Yeah, did I do a good job of presenting that? So Chontalpa is right there, and you have places that are recent but also historical, like Finca La Joya or Finca Tulipan, that are known for this. And today you can see that this has mimetized into the market as the almendra blanca.
Blanco Jaguar, is that a whole different thing?
Well, it depends really what Blanco Jaguar means, because it might be a construct for the market as a name, but essentially what it's meaning is, maybe in its genetics, is a cacao that it's mostly white or white.
It's great branding. Blanco Jaguar, I want to try that.
I mean, nobody wants to try a purple turtle, or maybe is what Blanco Jaguar gives you powers.
Well, it's like the white cheetah, or what? Like snow leopard. Sorry,
snow leopard.
Yeah, very attached to that. So,
well, and I don't wanna drink some sort of wine that says wine. I want to drink the wine that it's opus and that it's one, right? And so it's the opus one of chocolate. We can say it's a mimetization of a value proposition through a name or a marketing. But essentially, we distill it is cacao that has an active presence of this white beans, and white beans that are associated with this criollo variety or other types of varieties that have this white flesh.
So you're telling me you will go for that one because you're a fancy kid.
Well, let me bring you back to where I am now. So definitely those are proven to be grown in Chontalpa. But then you have, if you're telling me this is like, Jose, you're going to be a businessman, you're going to have to live from this. And I'm going to try to make my approximation as to like, perhaps where am I located? You have to give me more details here, Chava.
What Chontalpa? I'll give you Chontalpa. Yeah, why not?
I have a refinery nearby now. So
you own the whole supply, from growing to the final bar.
So let's say that I also have to be conscious about disease, right? Because I have ammoniasis, that it's ampant in that part of the state. And I am going to be like, okay, so I'm a fancy kid. I speak English. I can go and sit with you at Puyol, even if you force me, because, I want to make a deal. Maybe I will go for some story around criollo and having the means to actually process it, maybe have enough land for me to generate volume for fermentation. But let's suppose I am not a fancy kid.
Well, yeah, and I think this is so important because you are somebody that speaks and has the connoisseurship that is going to allow you to sell something very expensive, even if it's a lower volume.
But that's not the variety of the cacao. That's the variety of the person you are talking to.
Yeah, but
right?
the variety of the person is connected with the variety of cacao. That's, I think, what part of the conclusion that I'm foreseeing.
Let's put the variety of the person behind, and let's just speak that I am a normal Choltalpan, as many of our peers are. And you find yourself in the strait of making an economic decision in which you have maybe some other trees that can provide shade, but you don't have a lot of land. And you have given me the task of plant cacao, maybe within this context of government programs like Sembrando Vidas. Is like, what am I going to do? Well, first of all, I want to have volume. Right? I don't want maybe this white cacao, which as anything good in food is like of the things that is really good, later gives you little less, and it's a pain, and you have to talk to them and read to them before bed. Yeah. So let's say I have 17 kids and I really cannot take care of this cacao. I'm mostly going to go with a cacao that I know, not necessarily a pure variety, a Trinitario or a Forastero, but I might work with some of the cacaos that the National Research Institute has hybridized for them to be productive and resistant. So there are fancy names out there like the Olmeca or the Tikal, right? Like they are like hybridized with maybe other hybrids that come from Costa Rica, where there's an important research center, or they were hybridized with cacaos that were developed during the strong presence of the United Fruit Company here in Central America through the Zamorano School. And they have now basically have a very strong power to survive Monilia. They might taste like chocolate abuelita, but at least I can secure that everything that I'm going to produce, I'm going to be able to sell through a coyote or directly to a fermentory, and I'm going to have my income secure.
It's going to survive. I mean, it makes absolute total sense to me.
Yeah. And that's going to be maybe in terms of genetic purity, it's going to be not. Maybe it's going to have the worst sensory profile or a very mild sensory profile that is not very exciting, but blend it in with a Carlos Quinto and have a consistent demand, I'm all in for planting Olmecas.
In a way, you're messing with my head, because before I told you I was going to be the one messing with your head, and you're messing with mine now. Because when we start,
I like what this mezcal is doing to us.
Yeah, right. No, because. Okay, so this is a huge fight that I have in my realm that I know a little bit more of.
Please talk to us.
So you have Espadín, which now I find it hilarious that a lot of people is like, no, I don't drink Espadín. I only drink like the more wild genetics, like the special stuff. And you're like, kid, Espadín takes 7 years to grow. It grows, Angustifolia grows all around Mexico. It's amazingly diverse, amazingly capable of adapting to places. For me, it's almost like a lager where you really get to see the hand of the maker, because it's not an extrovert like Salmiana, right? Like this, you starts coming close to your face and it's exploding. Espadín has a little bit more of a subdued quality to it, or a subdued profile, like sensory profile, but it's delightful. So I am a big believer that in the right hands, any agave, just because it is so wonderful by itself as a product. Maybe if you're super pampered, I'm sure you've tried some of the most delicious chocolates in the world. And maybe for you, it's like, yeah, that's not as interesting. But it's still amazing.
It is.
Compared to other things. So you're telling me that there is effectively some genetics that are not as complex, or how would you say that? Like, it's just less information in there?
I have to say that I feel you. And
I'm there with you. I'm there with
I
you.
am with you. And let me tell you about one of the most expensive cacaos in the world today. It's a mixture of hybrids and other types of varieties.
You gave me a bar because we won a little thing at the workshop.
You did.
Porcelana.
You did. Yeah. Well, Porcelana is the one great exception. But let me tell you about others, for example, in Ecuador, that has a blend that, it's widely used in the specialty chocolate movement in the United States and in Europe. That part of that blend has CCN51, which is basically the espadín. If not anything, the espadín, like tell me like the worst kind of agave that you can possibly think of.
Not all of them are beautiful, but espadín will be perceived to be the less complex.
Like the worst enemy number one. Like I remember joking about creating an opera for the chocolate industry, and the villain of this opera was going to be CCN51.
Did you know how the costume was going to be?
It's definitely not very flattering.
Okay, sorry. We'll get to that.
Don't get me started on the opera because it's an unfinished project with my peers in Brazil.
Well, we have a studio.
And they are musicians, so
I'm just
may I be Anthony Hopkins, like narrating The Grinch?
If you have the budget, we'll make it happen.
Oh, so it's not going to happen. I'm an academic. You have to remember, budget is something we inherited lack.
Well, but anyway, we're talking about the Grinch, or not the Grinch, but the enemy.
Exactly, the Grinch of cacao. And this blend of cacao has an portion, I don't want to say significant, I don't want to say too little, but has CCN51. And it has an amazing flavor profile. It is out there. It's one of the cleanest cacaos in the world. It trades for a good price.
By clean, what do you mean?
It doesn't have, when you receive the cacao, you're stable. It's clean. It's well fermented. So it's a good quality product, and it receives a very substantial premium. We're talking about, if cacao right now it's $2,000, it goes for $7,000 a metric ton, and it has the espadín of cacao, right? So right back at you, I don't think that there is any necessarily a bad genetic, as well as there is perhaps not necessarily a bad hybrid, specifically within the context of the industry. The only place that they will become bad is when you go to the uber specialized snobbery, perhaps, if I can call it that, where there is a yes or a no in regards to variety.
But that is also, even economically speaking, such a teeny sliver.
I know you wanted me to mention, but in cacao and chocolate, we're talking about, if the market is 100%, that divides anything from your Carlos Quinto or your Hershey's Kiss all the way to the Supra Ubra wealth. The Supra Ubra elite parts of chocolate only represent 1% of the market, making us look in front of economists like a hobby.
Yes. So
a very expensive one.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think that a part of me, though, would like, and just to connect it with your idea, or a big part of your research, which is Mexico as a brand, I think that then, really in terms of strategy of which genetics do we want to be more present on our territory, which ones are we going to try to convince producers to plant, which ones are we trying to convince consumers to buy? How do you see that strategy? Like, because yeah, like I think about avocado, because that's like, I guess, like what my family has done for a few generations. And there's Hass and Mendes. And the only difference between them is one you harvest in a season, the other one you harvest in the other season. And not that many years ago, I met a gentleman that was trying to commercialize a type of criollo avocado called Azul. I come from a town called Peribán. That's why my last name is Peribán. And he had found this specific criollo called Azul de Peribán, which had like a super specific blackness to it that almost looked blue. And the guy was a fascinating entity. It was like, who the hell are you selling that to? And why is, for such a large industry of avocado, why are we not talking about the Mexican genetics of avocado and taking a slice of that pie, like trying to sell even more expensive avocado? So, like just thinking of that example, like genetically speaking as a strategy, what would you foster? Would you go for the Blanco Jaguar and the whiter stuff? Or would you like try to make a balance? I don't know. How would you tackle this?
Oh. This is such an interesting question, because I for more that I would love to reduce it to genetics, because it will be like a very peaceful, if anything, way to exist in the world. If we just had the one issue about what kind of genetics do we plant because we want to achieve some sort of pleasure or performance in our palate.
Well, like the Burgundy strategy of like, these are the grapes that represent my region, and therefore you're going to pay top dollar for it.
Very top dollar.
Yes.
I would like to say, can I mess with you entirely? Can I turn it around?
You've been doing that all this time.
No, but I'm just warning you that this is going to be a turn.
I'm gonna serve myself a little bit more of mezcal.
Share just for the embarrassment here. I will say that it doesn't really matter.
I knew you were gonna say that.
And
no, I'm just kidding.
I'm pretty sure you knew that it was going this way. Because, so we have a very interesting situation in Mexico, and in Mexico alone. I think we can share this with perhaps Hawaii, if anything. Or cacao, no matter if it's the shittiest cacao in the world, receives still a premium when we compare it to the rest of cacao commerce in the world. And what do I mean by a premium? There's a stock exchange in New York and London that set the price for cacao every day when the market's open. And when they set the price, they set it around, right now it's a little high, around the $3,000. But it's normally in between the 2,000, somewhere in that
And
range.
it's for metric ton.
It's for a metric ton, and that's how anybody in all that 99% of the world will trade cacao, or in many ways relate to in international commerce. But in Mexico, perhaps in areas like Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, Honduras, but mostly in Mexico. When your cacao, for example, is not fermented, as it's the case here in Mexico with cacao lavado, that is automatically considered a defect and therefore merits a lower price range international than the stock exchange price. Here in Mexico, you can have that cacao, and Nestle or the lady of the corner will pay even 1,000 more pesos, $1,000 more for that cacao.
And not even for specialty stuff.
No.
Like, this is going to go into aggressive industry that is completely going to mute the product.
Aggressive industry, or for the diets of people in those regions of Mexico where they also happen to produce cacao. Right? Like, it's messing with your mind because it's not following perhaps the trade routes. And for a lot of time, this was a critique coming my way of why is Mexican cacao so expensive? As I got to know the international cacao industry, I realized something completely different, which is, why is cacao in the world so cheap? Because in Mexico, we're paying our neighbor. In the Netherlands, they are not paying their neighbor. They are paying the Ghanaians, the Ivorians, the Nigerians, the Malaysians, the Ecuadorians, far, far, far away, that are making perhaps the same product, perhaps with some quality flaws too, not to their fault, but because of the environment that this is produced, and ends up in same products for the international
faceless economical interactions.
Faceless economic interaction. The pillow, the chocolate on your pillow at any given like average hotel at the airport, that chocolate, right? Like, it's so. If you ask me about genetics, here in Mexico, we already have a condition, which is we pay more for our cacao regardless of the genetics, of the processing, of the origin. Like, we are already in a premium economy by default. So now you ask me, it's like, so which genetics are we going to suggest for producers to plant? Well, that all depends about the market that you're trying to get. I just came back from Tabasco, from a festival where it was repetitively say we need to concentrate on the quality element, and quality terms cornering this like elite market of 1%, 5%, depending on how many products you include in that category.
Yeah.
And the reality is a lot of people in Mexico are not interested in participating in that market. There's people interested in that market. There's people actively engaging in that market because Mexico sells abroad and because they sell their cacao as quality, but they also sell their cacao as Mexico because of the storytelling. But there's a lot of producers that are interested in providing cacao to their local market.
Like a grocery.
Like a grocery. Because why? Because we consume it. And that is not something that is happening, for example, anywhere else than perhaps here in Mesoamerica, some areas of South America, and in the Philippines. Then the rest is tutti frutti. They chop cacao from the tree, they ferment it, they send it miles and miles away, and they are not consuming it there.
They've never tried it. Well,
They might have tried it, but they are like, I'm not gonna eat this if I can put it and make some more money and then buy something that I would like to eat part of my cuisine. There's no relationship to the cuisine there whatsoever. And you're starting to see a lot of governments, specifically in West Africa, for example, that are like, we need to get a cuisine going with cacao.
Of course.
Because we need to have an economic cycle. The thing that this keeps being almost like your thumb on the sun is this is not a decision necessarily that is going to impact the social development that you're going to have in your site. This is a business decision, it is, but what you brought me to Burgundy.
Yeah.
What Burgundy has is the French state, not Pinot Noir. Where Burgundy has is the European Union, not Chardonnay. It has a government that provides health, security, transportation, infrastructure, education.
Marketing.
Ergo, I can sit on my chair in the town of Beaune and talk how many things that you want to talk about Aligote and how it has prostituted our national identity. Because I have the time, because I don't have to be thinking about where am I going to go to the hospital or where am I going to send my kid to. So I love spending time in genetics in a world like your physics problem where there's no oxygen and there's no friction. In the real world, I would love to spend talking about cacao genetics, but that is not necessarily a conversation that I yet can link and most likely will not be able to link to social problems.
That is absolutely, years ago, I was watching a World Cup match. I'm not the biggest fan of soccer, but, it's a great excuse to drink beer and be loud and rowdy.
Exactly.
And,
excellent time for fish tacos. Yes.
and my French is definitely broken, but I've been working on it for a long time.
Maybe.
Mais ouais. So these, I can't remember who was playing. I was in Côte d'Ivoire against the Netherlands or something like that. And this French kid came by. I think we were talking, whatnot, and Côte d'Ivoire, I think, was winning. And I was like, I like to watch these matches, not because I care about soccer, but if you see a football team that is winning from a country that it's usually under service or it's gone through a problematic past, that means that there's enough institutions that are working that in the end, even though maybe the priorities are wrong and whatnot, but in the end, at least they put together a sports program that takes kids in there. There's a whole level of organization that needs to happen for a football team to be capable to compete, and give problems to a super rich country. There's a lot of things that need to happen before that is possible.
Yeah.
So what you're sort of telling me right now is that the world, if there was a World Cup of cacao,
I think there is. We'll talk more.
Yeah, but what you're telling me is we're almost like the lucky winners, which is very much like what Mexican football is. We sometimes win against Germany out of an absolute miracle. Does that mean our level of football is amazing? No, that just means it was like a tiny miracle. But yeah, no, I think I agree with you. So you don't even see that as a tool to accelerate the other process.
I don't see it. I have to be very honest. I don't see it. And I don't see it because everybody's very focused on it being done. And it has been for a lot of years. And we have seen that what has engrossed in terms of development is it has created jobs for me. Right? It has created jobs for me at a university
for the
talking
academics.
About this.
Yeah.
And I go, and my first worry when I have to drive out of Boston University is for there not to be a deer running in front of me during the snow season, or for me to leave chocolate melting on the car. But if you go to places like Veracruz, if you go to places like Tabasco in some areas like Huimanguillo, if you go to some areas in Chiapas today, talking about this different destillates like Comitán with Comiteco, their first worry is certainly not going to be a first world problem, but we have really issues about access to all sorts of social networks and social nets of support to add it to other elements like insecurity and immigration that, are plaguing these communities in very interesting ways. And if you go, I'm pretty sure if you transplanted this to the West African context, you have to deal with elements of things that have not been as deal with, like aspects of contemporary colonization, conditions analogous to slavery. And you cannot, for the love of God, put just the consumer of an enterprise in charge of making those better. So
Yeah.
I am all for espadín, as I am well for the weirdest type of agave you tell me that we need to eat, like consume. But do I feel that that's going to be the answer to the social problems? I think the social problems, the continued answer is going to be the boat, and it's going to be the government institutions.
Okay, so this is going to be such a long episode, but honestly, I don't care.
Good. I keep it flowing.
I really about this. I think this is the last one we're going to record just because like my head is already hurting a little bit out of like my effort of trying to keep up. But so I'll change the question a little in terms of keeping a healthy biodiversity. And this is also something that I love about cacao. Because, you know, we talk about milpa in other contexts so much. And this idea of that a healthy agricultural system may include a bunch of different things supporting each other. You know, what we learned in school, you plant the beans, so it fixes the nitrogen, and then that makes the corn grow
the Holy
healthy.
Trinity, to continue with the Catholic.
And the zucchini.
Yes.
Like, zucchini might be the Holy Spirit because it doesn't quite do much. It's there to...
Don't bug my zucchini. I love my field zucchinis.
Well, yeah, it's giving light to everything. But and then there's chiles and flowers. I mean, there's more than Holy Trinity once you get really into the true milpa. And I remember when the first time I went to I can't remember where it was. It was with the Agrofloresta guys, Hugo
Chavez, yes.
I was shocked.
Monica Turel.
I was shocked. They have all you walk into a jungle. I was like, this is not where you actually plant your cacao, right, guys? This is like a demonstrative thing of what could it be. And no, that is where they farm it. And there's, as you were saying, trees that provide the shade. There's all sorts of stuff on the ground. There's insects. There's stuff flying around. But you walk into a lot of other agricultural spaces. There's nothing because everything has been killed by pesticides.
Yes.
So you guys are super advanced in that front, I think.
I will.
I don't think. I know. But in that respect, does planting different genetics of cacao or planting other supporting species around it is something that concerns you? Do you think that it's part of this way of creating, well, changing the spaces for the better, to give because in the end, if you have a healthy soil, you have 500 years, 600, you have infinite time to keep on planting this. You destroy the soil, that's it. People migrate. Yeah,
absolutely. I think in many ways, the agroforestry system, when you have described, in which cacao has naturally found itself at a place that it likes, with ample shade, but not too much shade, being company of other different plants, not necessarily just cacao. It's something that, for the plant, it's very comfortable. And it is also a way, I'm pretty sure, through government programs, and this has happened not just in Mexico, but all throughout the cacao producing world, even in Africa, even in Southeast Asia. Agroforestry is really where we are trying to conceal. And there's a lot of different ways in the market that it has expressed. We have bars that get sold because they are saving birds or they are natural habitat of birds. We have one here in Mexico through Hacienda Napana. We have one very sound in the Dominican Republic to Sorsal. So there are definitely even elements of biodiversity being also an engine that people like to buy chocolate from. In terms of mixing genetics, you're asking the wrong person in terms of being a social scientist, because I'm pretty sure if you ask both a sensory analyst or a sensory snob, or you ask a person that it's actually looking at the agronomics of how this works, many people will tell you 2 different answers or 3 different answers. What I know, for example, and this is bits and pieces that I have heard from people that work in this field, is that keeping genetic purity is a little challenging through the effect of pollination. So you might have different trees, and then you might get cacaos of different breeds in the same plantation, because maybe the little mosquita or little fly or the fly will pollinate multiple flowers and then therefore generate different genetics, even in a tree that you assume it's one type of genetic.
So it's sort of the default state.
It is. There is ways to control them. One's more, humanly
Friendlier than the others.
The others, like you have people hand pollinating, right? So that
Do you see that on the labels of some bars? Hand pollinated cacao.
Now that I think about it, I have never seen it. I think that will be a faux pas right now. Maybe in some sort of like non-Victorian future, there will be like, oh my, cacao is hand pollinated. But definitely right now, in the time we live, will be a PR problem. Not to mention other types of more
If
severe
I ever
problems.
make a brand.
I know where you live. I'll make sure the Human Rights Commission comes right here to the studio.
Love it. Okay, no, I think that was an obliged question in some capacity. And now that everything that is suggested clearly is not of your interest, can you tell me one of the things that, I mean, you've sort of touched on them a little bit while you were despising my ideas.
I'm not getting a fair share here.
Never coming back. But so which would you, like, in terms of acupuncture, where would you place the needle in terms of really, like, in this more like with friction, like we're not in the vacuum, we live in this friction, sweaty, messy world. Where do you think is that needle has to go to solve some of the muscular problems of cacao?
So this is going to sound very hippie, so you can play Kumbaya here.
Roy, you heard the man. You're allowed to do that.
But since we are not going to solve the big macroeconomic problems by turning the cacao industry upside down, at least what we can do is create the cacao and chocolate industry to be a friendly and responsible place to be professionals. So there is today, and I'll say it here very openly, I have had plentiful conversations with different people from Mexico in the space. It is not a very hospitable place to be among colleagues. There is a lot of efforts to delegitimize each other's work. There's a lot of efforts to create some sort of politicization in people's projects. There is also the control of the few over the means of the many in terms of the tools such as the Mexico brand. I will say that if we want to make this work for at least the people professionally involved in the sector, the consumers might be something else. But at least to create a good work environment, which might not create the amazing wealth we're creating, I will bet on making sure that we have a system, that we have a group, that we have a commitment of leadership, that if you have amazing enough power, that if you have an amazing enough voice to be here, you do so consciously of that.
Civility. You're asking for civility.
I'm asking for a truce.
Good Lord.
And I think that comes at an honesty of making sure that we communicate what our products are, that we make sure that we stay connected and communicated, not necessarily to hinder anybody's ambitions or to hinder anybody's desire to individually succeed, but to know that to do so on an element that we spend most of professional talk saying like, did you see what that person do? Or can I tell you what happened here? Or, over scheduling conflicting events or making sure that we kind of cross people out of the list. That is something that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of health from the professional system.
But it's also sort of crazy for me because for everything you've told me, this is such a small industry. It doesn't mean power and fame. It's not like you're not going to end up in how many articles the New York Times writes a year about cacao? Maybe one, maybe two. It's not, you're not going to become a huge star through cacao. It's not, I don't see it like a place of this intense drama because there's like so much to get out of it.
Wow.
And
there's one article, right? There's one article of the New York Times, so you have to be there. And your enemy doesn't have to be there. It's a placebo of 1 out of 365 days, but there is that placebo. And it's as you know, picking up from the box of your grandmother expressions about the world. Small town, big hell.
Yeah. Pueblo Chico.
Pueblo Chico, Infierno Grande, for everybody listening in, favorite quote to describe any kind of social conversation. But if we're not necessarily making a substantial change in the social fabric of Tabasco, definitely we're bringing the problems in rather than making sure that these problems stay at bay. So I don't know how it's in mezcal and tequila. I am okay. So
I'm not allowed to speak up, but you sound like a toxic boyfriend. It seems like Cacao. You're not getting out of this house wearing that, woman.
It's a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bit of a toxic relationship. And it pains me. I have an excellent positionality to say this because I don't sell cacao, I don't sell chocolate.
Yeah.
I live abroad. Right? So
you're not going to disclose where you live abroad.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at Boston University, but not telling you when my classes are nor where. But in essence, what I would love to hear more is that you are coming to work in cacao and chocolate because it's a good place to work.
Man, and it's like such the ultimate delicious thing. You know, like you never eat, I mean, you may eat chocolate when you're sad to be happy. So it is, if I can think of two products that are the definition of happiness, it's ice cream and chocolate. So why the hell?
Well, you see where Willy Wonka ended up, right? Like
I can't remember that story.
Carla Martin and Dr. Carla Martin. It's doing a whole entire deep dive. But essentially, Willy Wonka was a man that lived alone, fired all his workers, slaved some sort of people in the promise of like endless chocolate, and was creating things in a not very transparent way. And you know, like it does. If you sit around and you really psychoanalyze Willy Wonka, I mean, you ended up with the toxic boyfriend in the room.
But then, it's so counterintuitive. I mean, it's terrible to hear this, honestly. I thought...
I'm sorry. I am sorry. You know, do eat chocolate. There's some good chocolate out there.
There's good people in the chocolate industry.
Oh, yeah. I have my favorites.
No, but I mean, it does make sense that something that is small, the biggest thing that you can benefit with this, to make the leap, to really take the advantage that it hasn't had, is to have a very healthy group of people that see a common objective, and that all, with their differences and different opinions and whatnot, but that they're all interested in coming to a better cacao.
Yeah.
And not just, you know, like having a better reputation, or people like, you know. Yeah.
In 1981, Roberto López Mendoza, an academic from the University of Chapinco, wrote a book called Cacao in Tabasco. And in this book, he wrote about what were the problems in production, what were the problems in science, and what were the problems socially in cacao in Tabasco. The problems on social organizations, you can literally copy paste and put today, where there's 3 people, they all hate each other, they control most of the industry, they don't speak to one another, they have their favorites to run for governor or for government. And for me, it's very challenging because I have received a warm welcome from most parties, not from all, but for most. And I have been received as an expert that comes from abroad. While I was born in Mexico City, they somehow have like stars and stripes on my forehead.
But you also present yourself when you speak in English. When you walked into the studio, you didn't speak in Spanish to me.
Yes, is this it?
I'm kidding.
I think that this is what we have been calling fake news. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, no, this is completely inaccurate.
And I was late 11 minutes, so that makes you even more Mexican.
Yeah.
So, but in essence, for example, you know, we met at a seminar organized by our friends Belén Arrazola and Karina Archundia.
Correct.
Yes,
I love that you mix them like that.
They're a wonderful winning team, and they have provided this forum for us to meet and for us to do with professionals. But I know out there that there is a ton of animosity or support for that space. And I went and I had the invitation from another friend of mine, Jose Antonio Nieves, and on behalf of the state of Tabasco with Carlos Merino, the governor, to be part of the festival. But I know there's also a lot of animosity about that. And I get the wishy-washy and I get the nitty-gritty and la oreja from all the different people that might have specific grievances, right and wrong grievances, but not one element of discussion is the element of civility. We have gone beyond the line where you go to the US and it's like, please do not cross this line. We have definitely crossed it in many different instances. So we cannot necessarily grab each other and sing a nice like pseudo-Christian song. That's not the objective here, but certainly we're making this a non-hospitable place to be.
Man, I mean, I would love, and before last week, I was sure that this is going to be a short-lived podcast, to be completely transparent with you. But I've been enjoying doing this so much that now I see it will go on for years. So I really hope we get to record again like in 5 years' time. And you come to me and you tell me, you remember what I told you about...
I was persecuted and I had to leave Mexico.
No, come on. No, that you tell me like, man, that we're like, no civility as... we're talking about that. Friendship. I would love it to tell me like, we've crossed civility, now we're talking about friendship. Yeah. That'll be badass.
And we don't have to... there's a lot of people out there that don't want friends and they want friends to be a private matter, but we certainly cannot. I will have to say we don't have to be friends, but we cannot be enemies.
Or just personal enemies. We can have extremely aggressively distinct perspectives on things and profoundly dislike your perspective on something, but not you, Jose. Right? Like your ideas, like I'll be happy to attack them and despise them. Well, not me, but an imaginary me that it's in the cacao industry, but not you as a person.
Yeah. And I'll be perfectly honest. I don't think that even extremely dislike, I'll say to present counter arguments or to find a common ground. But if we want to be leaders, because I think that nobody will object to the word of being called a leader, if we definitely want to be leaders, even as individual contributors, we definitely have to know that the table is shared.
I think that's an amazing conclusion. Yeah. Jose, really, really a pleasure. I don't know if we broke the record for the longest episode of I was going to say agave, which is my last podcast. But man, I have like a tiny drop.
I do too. Salud. Thank you.
My pleasure.
¿Chingón? Sí. ¿Estuvo perro? Sí, claro. Todo el mundo va a rugir por eso.
This was Heritage Mezcal, the incredibly eclectic podcast that likes to delve into the depths of the country we call Mexico. I'm Chava Peribán, your host, and I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. All the sounds, all the music, and now all the videos living in YouTube are made by Roy Sierra. Tómese el mezcalito con gusto y medida y nos miramos al rato.